There is a very specific kind of silence that appears right before a big decision. It doesn't look dramatic from the outside. You might be sitting in your room, staring at a screen, walking in circles, replaying conversations in your head. Everyone else thinks you're just thinking it through, but inside, something else is happening. Your chest feels tight, your thoughts are looping. You imagine worst-case scenarios. You picture regret before you even act, you delay. You tell yourself you need more time, more information, more certainty. And the opportunity just sits there, waiting. If this sounds familiar, you are not indecisive. You are afraid, but not in the obvious way. The psychology of hesitation before big decisions is not about weakness. It's about protection, it's about identity. It's about your brain doing exactly what it was designed to do: avoid risk. The problem is that your brain was designed for survival, not expansion. And survival and growth require opposite behaviors. When you face a major decision, changing careers, ending a relationship, starting something new, moving to another city, investing time or money into a risk, your nervous system does not evaluate it based on potential reward. It evaluates it based on potential threat, and threat, psychologically, is not limited to physical danger. Threat includes loss of status, loss of belonging, loss of certainty, loss of identity, loss of control. Big decisions carry all of them. That's why hesitation feels so intense. One of the first psychological mechanisms at play is loss aversion. Your brain weighs potential loss more heavily than potential gain. The pain of losing what you have feels stronger than the pleasure of gaining something better, even if your current situation is mediocre. Even if you're unhappy, even if you know change is necessary. Familiar discomfort feels safer than unfamiliar possibility. That is not weakness. It is wiring. Another layer is identity preservation. Every big decision threatens your current self-concept. If you quit your job, who are you without that title? If you leave the relationship, who are you without that attachment? If you move cities, who are you without that environment? Your identity is a narrative your brain has rehearsed thousands of times. Big decisions rewrite the script, and rewriting the script triggers psychological resistance because the ego equates stability with safety. Another powerful psychological factor is anticipated regret. Before you even act, your mind simulates the future. What if this fails? What if I embarrass myself? What if I make the wrong choice? What if I lose everything? The mind generates catastrophic imagery because it believes preparation equals protection. If I imagine the worst, I can avoid it. But this mental rehearsal rarely reduces fear, it amplifies it. Another hidden layer of hesitation is fear of responsibility. If you don't decide, you can blame circumstances. If you don't act, you can blame timing. If you wait long enough, sometimes the decision disappears. But if you choose and it goes wrong, you must own it. And ownership is heavy. Responsibility forces maturity. Maturity forces accountability. And accountability removes excuses. That's terrifying. Another crucial psychological component is fear of success. Yes, success. Because success changes your environment. It changes expectations. It changes how people treat you. It changes your responsibilities. It changes your relationships. Growth requires adaptation. And adaptation requires effort. Sometimes your hesitation is not about failing. It's about becoming someone new and not knowing if you can handle that version of yourself. Another layer is social belonging. Humans are wired for tribe survival. For thousands of years, being excluded meant death. Today, rejection won't kill you, but your nervous system doesn't know that. When you consider a bold decision, your brain asks, will this isolate me? Will people judge me? Will I lose approval? Belonging is more powerful than ambition. That's why people stay in jobs they hate, relationships that drain them, cities that shrink them. Because leaving threatens social stability, and social stability feels essential. Another psychological force behind hesitation is perfectionism. If you believe you must make the perfect choice, you will delay endlessly. Perfectionism disguises itself as high standards. But psychologically, it is avoidance. If I wait long enough, I can eliminate risk. If I gather enough data, I can remove uncertainty. But uncertainty is not removable, it is structural to growth. Another factor is cognitive overload. Big decisions overwhelm the brain's capacity to process variables. Too many possibilities create paralysis. Choice overload leads to analysis paralysis. You replay pros and cons, you create mental spreadsheets. You consult everyone, but clarity doesn't come from more thinking. It comes from commitment. Another important psychological truth is that hesitation often reveals attachment to outcome control. You want guarantees, you want reassurance, you want proof. But life doesn't offer guarantees. It offers probability, and probability requires courage. Courage is not absence of fear. It is action despite it. Another subtle factor is emotional memory. Your brain stores past failures vividly. If you've made mistakes before, your mind references them instantly. Remember last time, remember how that hurt. The brain believes hesitation prevents repetition. But avoiding decisions doesn't eliminate risk, it delays growth. Another layer is the illusion of future readiness. You tell yourself, I'll decide when I feel more confident. I'll act when I feel less afraid. I'll move when the timing is perfect. But readiness is not a feeling. It is a consequence of action. Confidence does not precede movement. It follows it. This is where many people get stuck. They wait for fear to disappear. It never does. Because fear is not a signal to stop. It is a signal that something meaningful is at stake, and meaningful things require risk. Another psychological shift happens when you realize something powerful. Indecision is also a decision. Choosing not to choose is still a path. Hesitation protects you from immediate discomfort. But it creates long-term stagnation, and stagnation has a cost. The cost is subtle at first: regret, restlessness, quiet resentment toward yourself. Then it grows: loss of momentum, erosion of self-trust, diminished belief in your own agency. Every time you hesitate and retreat, your brain learns, I cannot handle risk. But every time you hesitate and move anyway, your brain learns, I survive uncertainty. That is transformation. Another important psychological truth is this: the fear before big decisions rarely matches the reality after them. Anticipation exaggerates, experience calibrates. The mind inflates consequences because it prefers caution, but growth recalibrates fear downward. Each bold decision reduces the next hesitation. Courage compounds. And here is the deepest paradox: the thing you fear most in big decisions is not failure. It is irreversibility. Once you choose, you cannot go back to who you were before. But that is precisely the point. Big decisions mark identity evolution. You hesitate because you sense the shift. You feel the threshold, and thresholds are uncomfortable. But thresholds are sacred because on the other side is expansion. The question is not whether you are afraid. You are. The question is whether you are willing to grow larger than your fear. Because fear will always be present at the edge of growth. Always, it is the cost of becoming. And when you understand that hesitation is not weakness but the final test before evolution, you stop waiting for courage. You act while your voice shakes, you move while your mind doubts. You decide while uncertainty remains, and something extraordinary happens. You begin to trust yourself more than you trust your fear. And once self-trust becomes stronger than fear, hesitation loses its power.